Before empires fell, before names became myths, the world was divided, east and west, Persia and Greece, one ruled by divine kings in golden palaces, the other by free men in dusty city-states, proud, quarrelsome, brilliant, and fragile. In the 4th century BC, the Persian Empire stretched from the Indus River to the shores of Egypt, the largest empire humanity had ever known. Its king, Darius III, commanded armies of hundreds of thousands and treasuries overflowing with gold. Greece, meanwhile, was a patchwork of rival cities like Athens, Sparta, and Thebes, still haunted by the memory of Leonidas and the 300, and the terrifying might of Persia. But in the north, beyond the civilized world, in the rugged highlands of Macedon, a storm was gathering. Not a kingdom in the Greek sense, but a warrior state hardened by mountains and ambition. And from its heart, a boy would be born who would not just cross the line between east and west, he would erase it forever. In the summer of 356 BC, in the royal palace of Pella, Queen Olympias gave birth to a son. That same night, it was said, the temple of Artemis in Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the world, burned to the ground. The priests cried, "Great evil has been born," but others whispered, "Or great glory." His name was Alexander, defender of men. His father, Philip II, was no ordinary king. A master strategist, he transformed Macedon from a backwater into a military powerhouse using the Macedonian phalanx, soldiers armed with 18-foot pikes called sarissas, moving like a forest of steel. But Philip knew his son was different. At age 12, while nobles watched in disbelief, young Alexander approached Bucephalus, a wild black stallion no rider could master. The horse reared, eyes wide with fear, but Alexander noticed something. It was terrified of its own shadow. He turned the horse toward the sun, spoke softly, and mounted him. The beast calmed, and from that day they were inseparable. Philip wept. "Seek another kingdom for yourself, my son," he said. "Macedon is too small for you." At 13, Alexander was sent to the foothills of Mount Olympus to study under Aristotle, the greatest philosopher of the age. For 3 years, under olive trees and starlit skies, he learned logic, medicine, poetry, and politics. But above all, he fell in love with Homer's Iliad, the tale of Achilles, glory, and immortal fame. He carried a copy under his pillow. He slept with a dagger and the Iliad. He didn't want to be a king, he wanted to be a legend. By 16, he was ruling Macedon in his father's absence, crushing rebellions, founding cities, and dreaming of Persia. And when Philip was assassinated in 336 BC, the legend began. Alexander was just 20 when his father fell, stabbed at his own daughter's wedding by a disgraced bodyguard. Conspiracy theories exploded. Was it a Persian plot? A jealous general? Even Olympias was suspected. But Alexander had no time for grief. In 48 hours, he executed every rival claimant to the throne. In 1 week, he secured the loyalty of the army. In 1 month, he was crowned king of Macedon. But Greece saw weakness. Thebes, once crushed by Philip, rose in revolt, declaring, "The lion is dead, now the cub rules." They were wrong. Alexander marched 240 miles in 13 days, an impossible speed, appearing at Thebes' gates before the city could prepare. He offered peace. They laughed, so he gave them war. For 3 days, his soldiers tore through the city. When it was over, 6,000 Thebans lay dead. 30,000 were sold into slavery, and the city was scrubbed from the map. Only the poet Pindar's house spared, for the sake of the muses. The message echoed across the Aegean. Alexander does not negotiate. He decides. Greece submitted. The League of Corinth named him hegemon, supreme commander. And his eyes turned east. To avenge the burning of Athens, he claimed. But the truth was deeper. He wanted to become the man Homer never wrote. but should have. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont, the narrow strait between Europe and Asia, with 35,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, and no plan to return. He didn't bring siege towers. He didn't bring months of grain. He brought faith in his own destiny. His first battle, the Granicus River. Persian satraps lined the far bank, confident their cavalry would slaughter the invaders in the water. But Alexander, wearing a white plume so all could see him, charged first, sword flashing, shield splintered, nearly killed by a Persian axe. His general Clitus saved him just in time. The Persians broke. Thousands died. The road to Asia was open. Next, Issus. On a narrow coastal plain, King Darius III himself led 100,000 men against Alexander's 40,000. But Alexander saw the trap. He attacked the Persian left flank, then sprinted straight for Darius. The Persian king panicked. He turned his chariot and fled, abandoning his mother, wife, and children on the battlefield. Instead of parading them as trophies, Alexander bowed to Queen Sisygambis. "Do not fear," he said. "You are not prisoners. You are my family now." This was psychological warfare as statecraft. Then came Tyre, an island city with walls 150 feet high, believed impregnable. For 7 months, Alexander built a half-mile causeway from the mainland. When the walls fell, 8,000 Tyrians were slaughtered, 30,000 sold into slavery. And then, Gaza, a desert fortress on a hill. After 2 brutal months, its commander was dragged alive behind a chariot, just like Achilles dragged Hector. Alexander showed mercy to the learned, cruelty to the defiant. He wasn't just conquering, he was rewriting the rules of power. By 331 BC, Alexander stood in Persepolis, the heart of the Persian Empire. Marble halls, gold ceilings, gardens fed by canals. This was the seat of Xerxes, the destroyer of Athens. At a victory feast, drunk on wine and triumph, the Athenian courtesan Thais stood and cried, "Let us burn this place. Let Persia know its glory is ash." Alexander, eyes blazing, threw the first torch. The palace of Darius burned for days. Historians still debate. Was it revenge, madness, or a symbolic end to the old world? But Alexander didn't stop. He adopted Persian dress, demanded his men prostrate themselves before him. He married Roxana, a Bactrian princess, and encouraged his officers to wed Persian nobles. "East and West must become one," he declared. His veterans grumbled, "He's no longer Macedonian, he's a Persian god-king." He pushed into India, the edge of the known world. At the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus and 200 war elephants. It was his hardest battle. His horse Bucephalus died, and Alexander wept like a child. He built a city in its honor, Bucephala. But then, his army refused to go further, exhausted, homesick, broken by monsoons and fever. Alexander locked himself in his tent for 3 days. When he emerged, he said only, "We turn back, but the world will remember we came this far." In June 323 BC, in the palace of Babylon, Alexander fell ill. Fever, pain, swelling. Some say malaria, others poison. Or perhaps his body simply gave out from 13 years of war, wine, and divine ambition. At 32 years old, he died, without naming a clear heir. His last words? Possibly, "To the strongest." His empire fractured within days. His generals carved it into pieces. His dream of unity faded, but his legacy did not. He spread Greek language, art, science, and philosophy from the Nile to the Indus. The Hellenistic age gave us Euclid, Archimedes, and the Library of Alexandria. He founded over 20 cities named Alexandria, one of which became the intellectual capital of the ancient world for 700 years. No one has ever ruled so much, so young. No one has ever blended cultures so boldly. No one has ever burned so brightly and left such light behind. Alexander the Great lived for only 32 years, but in that time, he shattered the limits of the known world and taught humanity that greatness is not measured in land, but in legacy. He did not just conquer the world, he made us believe it could be one. If you were captivated by the rise of history's most brilliant conqueror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more epic tales from His Talks AI, where history isn't just remembered, it roars.